25 years of marriage had a way of making every ordinary moment feel permanent. The morning coffee always tasted the same. The familiar footsteps echoed through the hallway at the same time each evening. The photographs lining the living room walls told the story of two people who had built a lifetime together through countless small sacrifices rather than grand gestures. It had never been a perfect marriage. There had been arguments over money, disagreements about careers, moments of disappointment, and seasons when silence seemed easier than conversation. Yet every challenge had been faced together, and every hardship had eventually become another memory that strengthened the bond they believed would last forever. For years the husband believed they had reached that comfortable stage where love no longer needed constant reassurance. He thought stability itself was proof of devotion. He never imagined that what felt secure to him could feel like a prison to someone else. Everything changed on an ordinary Tuesday evening. The dinner table was neatly prepared as always. Candles burned softly, though there was nothing special to celebrate. The quietness in the room felt different. It was not peaceful, it was heavy. His wife barely touched her meal. She stared at the plate for several long moments before finally speaking. "I need to tell you something." The words immediately tightened his chest. He smiled nervously. "What is it?" She looked directly into his eyes with an expression he had never seen before. "I want someone younger." The sentence landed with such force that for several seconds he wondered whether he had heard it correctly. He laughed softly, expecting her to smile. She did not. "I am serious." The smile slowly disappeared from his face. He searched her eyes for a sign of anger, frustration, or a cruel joke. There was nothing, only certainty. His voice became barely audible. "What are you saying?" "I want a divorce." The room suddenly felt smaller. The candles continued burning. Outside, rain quietly tapped against the windows. Everything around him remained exactly the same while his entire world collapsed. He wanted to argue. He wanted to remind her of every anniversary, every vacation, every difficult year they had survived together. Instead, he simply asked the question that frightened him most. "Is there someone else?" She remained silent. That silence answered everything. Within a month the divorce papers were signed. The house they had carefully decorated together was sold. The furniture was divided. The photographs disappeared from the walls. 25 years had been reduced to legal documents and moving boxes. Friends tried comforting him with the usual phrases. "Life goes on. Time heals everything. You deserve better." None of those words reached him. The hardest part was not being alone. The hardest part was waking up every morning expecting to hear another person breathing beside him before remembering that half of his life had vanished. Weeks became months. He stopped attending social gatherings. He avoided places they had once visited together. Even grocery shopping reminded him of memories he desperately wanted to escape. One rainy afternoon he wandered into a small bookstore simply to avoid getting wet. The store was nearly empty. An elderly woman stood behind the counter organizing old novels. She smiled warmly. "You look like someone carrying a very heavy suitcase." He looked around, confused. "I am not carrying anything." She smiled again. "The heaviest luggage is usually invisible." For the first time in months someone had seen through the polite smile he showed the world. Without realizing why, he began talking. Not about the divorce itself. About the dreams that had disappeared. About believing he had failed. About feeling as though his best years had already ended. The elderly woman listened without interrupting. When he finally finished she handed him a worn novel from the shelf. "Take this." "I cannot accept it." "You are not buying a book." "What am I receiving?" "A reminder." He looked at the faded cover. There was only one sentence written inside the first page. "The ending of one chapter is never the ending of the story." Those words stayed with him. He began reading again. He started walking every morning. Then exercising. He cooked healthier meals. He repaired things around his small apartment himself. Little by little the broken man began rebuilding his confidence. He was not trying to prove anything to his former wife. He simply wanted to recognize himself again. Months later an old friend convinced him to volunteer at a community center. At first he refused. Eventually he agreed. Every Saturday he helped organize local charity events. He met people who had experienced losses far greater than his own. Widows rebuilding their lives. Young parents fighting illness. Retired teachers dedicating their time to helping children succeed. Listening to their stories changed something inside him. Pain was universal. Healing was possible. One afternoon while arranging donated books he noticed a woman struggling to carry several heavy boxes. Without hesitation he offered assistance. She smiled with genuine gratitude. Their conversation lasted only a few minutes. Yet something felt refreshingly different. There were no expectations, no attempts to impress each other. Just kindness. Over the following weeks they met repeatedly while volunteering. Their friendship developed naturally. She had also experienced heartbreak years earlier. Neither of them rushed into discussing romance. Instead they shared conversations about favorite books, family traditions, travel dreams, and the strange ways life could surprise people after they believed every surprise had already happened. For the first time since the divorce he laughed without forcing it. He realized happiness was quietly returning. Not because another person had rescued him. Because he had learned to rescue himself first. Meanwhile rumors occasionally reached him through mutual friends. His former wife appeared frequently on social media with a younger man. The photographs showed expensive vacations, elegant restaurants, and smiling faces. At first those pictures reopened old wounds. Then something unexpected happened. He stopped looking. He no longer measured his healing against someone else's choices. Nearly 2 years passed. One autumn evening the community center organized a fundraising dinner. Hundreds of guests attended. As he greeted visitors near the entrance he suddenly recognized a familiar face. His former wife. She froze upon seeing him. Time seemed to stand still. She slowly walked toward him. He noticed subtle changes. The confident smile he remembered had faded. Her eyes carried exhaustion hidden beneath careful makeup. They exchanged an awkward greeting. After a long silence she spoke. "You look different." He smiled politely. "I feel different." She looked around the room. "I heard you volunteer here every week. I enjoy it. You seem happy." He nodded. "I am." Her expression became difficult to read. Almost regretful. Finally she confessed quietly. "I thought leaving would make everything exciting again." He remained silent. "The younger man I left with was charming at first." She forced a weak smile. "But excitement fades much faster than loyalty." She lowered her eyes. "He left." The words hung between them. For years he had imagined this moment. He once dreamed of hearing those exact words. He believed they would bring satisfaction. Instead he felt only sadness. Not because he wanted her back. Because he remembered the woman she had once been before ambition, insecurity, and impossible expectations had transformed both of them. She hesitated before asking the question. "Do you ever think about us?" He answered honestly. "I think about the good memories. And the bad ones. They taught me who I needed to become." Tears quietly gathered in her eyes. "I made the biggest mistake of my life." He gently nodded. "Perhaps." She looked at him with hope. "Could we start over?" The room fell silent around them. Years earlier he would have answered immediately. Now he took his time. He realized forgiveness and reconciliation were not the same thing. He had already forgiven her long before that evening. But rebuilding trust after it had been completely shattered was another matter entirely. He smiled kindly. "I truly hope you find happiness." She waited. He continued. "But my future cannot be built inside my past." Those words were spoken without anger. Without revenge. Without bitterness. Simply with acceptance. She slowly nodded. For the first time she understood that the man standing before her was no longer the husband she had left behind. Pain had changed him. Loss had strengthened him. Loneliness had taught him self-respect. She quietly thanked him before walking away into the crowd. He watched her disappear, not with longing but with peace. Later that evening the woman he had met through volunteering joined him outside beneath a sky filled with brilliant stars. She noticed his thoughtful expression. "Everything all right?" He smiled. "Yes. You look relieved. I finally closed a door that stayed open for too long." She reached for his hand. He accepted it without hesitation. There was no dramatic declaration. No promise that life would always be perfect. Only two people who understood how fragile happiness could be and therefore appreciated every ordinary moment together. As they walked home beneath the cool evening sky he realized something remarkable. 25 years of marriage had not been wasted. They had shaped him into someone capable of deeper compassion, greater patience, and stronger character. The divorce that once felt like the end of everything had quietly become the beginning of a completely different life. Sometimes the greatest love story is not about holding on forever. Sometimes it is about discovering that even after unimaginable heartbreak, the human heart still possesses the extraordinary courage to trust again, to hope again, and to love again. He never expected the woman who walked away to become the reason he eventually found himself. Yet that was the greatest surprise of all. Life had not rewarded him with revenge. It had rewarded him with peace. And peace, he finally understood, was worth far more than proving anyone wrong.